Hey, I am really excited to be here with Nicole Tsong. Nicole is a colleague of mine, and she is a work-life balance and energy coach. She's also an author and a speaker. Welcome, Nicole. So happy
Thank
to
you.
have you.
Yeah, thank you, Stacey. I'm so excited to be here.
Thanks. Um, all right, so Nicole, you work with the concept of intuition a lot. You really heighten women's skills so they can apply this to their personal life, to important decisions, personally, professionally. How did you get into this?
Well, I think that everyone's probably had this experience around intuition where your intuition speaks. And one of the things I always like to remind people is that when it's speaking, it actually can get quite persistent. And so I had that experience. I used to be a journalist, and I sat surrounded by people who wanted to be authors, and I was always like, I'm not doing that. Right. So I was never gonna. I didn't want to be an author. I was like, no way, not me. And then I left journalism to be a yoga teacher, and I really made that a full career. And I was deep in that career. I was working for a yoga company. I was writing a fitness column for the Seattle Times. And then I was also teaching yoga. So I was working like 60 hours a week. But then my intuition spoke up and it said, hey, Nicole, it's time to write a book. And I was like, oh no, 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 no. I'm not doing that. I'm too busy. I'm too busy. I've got too much going on. But it really became this very persistent voice that kept talking to me. And I had to really start to listen to it. And so there's a whole, other element to that story, but it really became something that was so strong, I really couldn't ignore it. And then I left my job at the yoga company. And 4 months later, I had my first book deal. So it is that kind of thing where it just starts to speak loudly if you listen. And then once you listen, then actually the world starts to open up around what it is your intuition is saying.
That's interesting. And what's really interesting about your story is that initially you wanted to ignore it, right? You were like, no,
Mm.
no, no, that's not me. So, what do you think is a consequence when we're not listening to our intuition?
Well, I always like to say, I think that pretty much every woman I've ever met has done that around a relationship. And
Mhm.
we call it an override, right? Where your intuition is telling you something about this relationship. Hey, not that one. And then we're like, oh, for lots of reasons, we come up with all the reasons why we should stay with that person or stay in that relationship. And then, years later, breakups, drama, all this stuff. And so I give that as an example because that was one of my very first one, was in my 20s. And so that we often do that. And then we do that also in small ways on a daily basis, and that you deal with the consequences of that. And I know so many of your audience is really around health, but I do that too. It's like when you override yourself and you eat something and you're like that was not a good choice, and you can feel it in your body. So there's this distinction I think I just wanted to share really quickly is around a lot of times people understand that intuition is generally in your body, but there are distinct differences between following your intuition and then the sensation in your body when you're overriding your intuition. And so that's a lot of what I work with people on, is starting to understand that distinction.
I love that. I really love that because you're right. It doesn't just apply to, that work life decisions, that kind of thing, but it really can apply to our health. And I think many of us override our decisions when we tell ourselves a story like, hey, I deserve that. Or "Oh, she can eat that, why can't I?"
Mhm.
Or, we use a lot of negative self-talk to really override those better decisions that we could really make. What kind of benefits have you seen from helping women tap into their intuition and then also helping them to, skip the override, but actually follow it?
Well, what it does is when we're overriding, that's when you're questioning yourself, you question your decisions, you have a lot of anxiety and stress. That all comes from overriding. When we doubt ourselves, you go into all this fear, I can't do it, I'm going to fail, etc. I do a huge body of work. A lot of what I work with women on is goals, because the thing is, when we are coming from a clear space and from intuition, well, the benefit of it is that you actually start to feel fulfilled. You start to follow a pathway that feels really correct for you. And then you start to live into the purpose of why you're here. And
Yeah.
so when we're overriding, we just can't even get there. We can't even get to that point because we are in stress. We are in anxiety. We don't love our work. We're struggling in our relationships. And so, how do you start to get to that clear space where you know that you're on the right pathway for you? And it is a daily practice. It is fully something I work with people on every day.
Yeah. Yeah. I always encourage people just to listen, to be still. I call it the power of the pause. Just understanding how to just be still and listen to what your body is saying to you. But even beyond health, how have you seen it affect women in their personal life, in their, you know, in their personal decisions, in their professional decisions? What kind of, what kind of, stories have you really experienced with clients?
I mean, I had one client who came to me and she had been a stay-at-home mom for a while and previously had a pretty big career. And she said, "Oh, Nicole, I don't know what I'm here to do. I feel very stressed, etc." And she was really struggling. And then it didn't take very long for me to dig in with her and to realize that she had been taking photography classes on the side. And
Mhm.
actually, what she wanted to do was pursue this career in photography, but she just wasn't really willing to say it out loud before we started to work together. So that happens for people. Or somebody, I'm in Seattle. I have a lot of really strong, ambitious women here, work at big companies like Amazon, and they say, "I don't really know what I want to do." But then when we really get into it, they want to write books on leadership. Like, they have really big goals and things that they want to achieve, but they're pushing them down
Mhm.
because they're like, "Oh no, I'm supposed to do this. I'm supposed to have this big job. I'm supposed to be a mom in a certain way." And they're not really listening to what that deep inner voice is telling them, which you need by pausing, right? And then starting to listen to it and then going into what it is that you're excited about and energized by, so that you're not feeling that level of stress and anxiety every
Absolutely. And I'm sure in addition, you help them overcome that fear of following that path that
day.
might feel scary, or even when it comes to just making personal decisions for yourself, what you're eating, how you're living, who you're, decisions you're making and the way that you're living your life. I'm sure that you help women overcome that as well and sort of push past that. Does that sound
It's like anything that you do, it's a muscle, right? And I'm a fitness person, a movement person. Like, you have to build strength around intuition. And so you have to understand it, and then you have to start to flex it. You have to start to say, "Okay, today I'm going to do it." So actually, we have to build it every single day so that when you have big decisions, because I do help women make really big career shifts, big choices, that you have to be able to flex that muscle so that when you're taking that leap, like, I've had many people want to start new businesses or start a side hustle. Like, I have a client who's working on a website with recipes while she's also holding down her corporate job. But the recipes and cooking is her passion. So it's like starting to flex that muscle, building that on the side. And then what would it take to start to take that leap to actually go and make that a full time kind of job? And it takes flexing, right? Like, getting strong around your intuition, listening to it, and then actually saying, "Okay, yes, I'm going for it."
I love it. I love it. Now, you also have something that you're sharing.
Mhm.
You are giving whoever wants it 5 simple steps for high achieving women and high achieving women of color to trust your intuition and stop guessing yourself, second guessing yourself, and
Mhm.
just feeling confident with your own voice. So I'm going to include that link. And tell us, where else can people read more about you? And you also have a book coming out.
Yes, I do. So I wrote those first books, and I have another book coming out in October, which is 24 Ways to Move More, which is all about getting movement and energy and fun and creativity back in your life. And I have to say, of all the things that help you with your intuition, moving your body is a huge piece of that, like getting clear and settled. So yeah, you can read that. That's 24 Ways to Move
Agreed.
More. You can find out more about the book. And then, yes, I know that Stacey will include the link to the 5 simple steps to master your intuition.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Perfect. Well, thank you again so much for joining me. I'm sure so many women relate to, you know, that little voice inside of them and really how valuable it actually is.
Absolutely. Thank you,
All
Stacy.
right, thanks.